Welcome to the official Cryptids, Anomalies, and the Paranormal Society's podcast. I'm your host, Barnaby, and you're listening to Whispers from the Dark. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Whispers from the Dark. I am your host, Barnaby, and today we have a special guest today. She is having an event up in Upper Wisconsin, and I will let her tell you all about it. Our guest today on the show is Charlie Lynn. Hello and welcome.
Hi, Barnaby. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. So you have an event coming up that I will be a part of up in Upper Wisconsin, way up north.
Yes.
For me, at least.
Yes. way up north. If you drive through it, you're going to be like in Michigan, I'm telling you.
Yeah, definitely. So tell us a little bit about it. What's going on?
Yeah, so we are hosting it in a village called Butternut, Wisconsin, and it's going to be on June 25th. And basically what it is it's a holistic and metaphysical fair. And I've spent a lot of time, I've done events like you have, and they're usually more in the bigger areas, Rhinelander, Superior, Hayward, Ashland kind of things. And there are fairs that still hit the littler areas, but they're still always about an hour from me. And I was looking at how do I bring that healing to my area? How do I help educate people? So that's kind of how this came into play. And I started reaching out and networking, and we have a ton of vendors, and we're still looking to add vendors. But we have psychics, mediums, Reiki healers. We have Barnaby. So there's lots of different things for people to come in and see. There's authors, life coaches. So it's just basically, in a nutshell, bringing holistic options to small town America.
Cool. Can you tell us a little bit about what holistic means?
Yeah, so when I look at holistic, to me, it means healing the whole body. So we're not just treating one ailment. We are looking at how do we support the body as a whole. So that's physical, but it's also our mental health. It's our spiritual well-being and our, physical, we go to a doctor, but if you go to a doctor because your elbow hurts, he's going to treat your elbow. Where if you're looking at holistic medicine, they're going to look at the whole thing as a whole. Okay, well, your elbow hurts, but let's help your arm. Let's help your body. And not that, I don't want people to think that I'm saying, oh, go holistic, don't look at doctors. That's not what it's about. It's really about bringing in that spiritual support, bringing in healing for the whole body. Healing, people talk about auras and our energy levels. So really focusing on those types of things.
Cool. So your event is in Butternut, Wisconsin, and it's from, looks like 10 to 5 p.m., right?
Yes.
And you're going to have other speakers there as well, besides myself?
We are. So we are going to have author and life coach Amy Burness there. She's going to be speaking. We are going to have a psychic medium, Dayette Renee. A lot of people may have heard from her coming in and talking. And then other people are going to be doing more, maybe some demonstrations at their table of Reiki healing. A lot of people in the area don't know what is Reiki healing. And really, it's laying hands and helping move energy through and around the person's body to help foster healing. And so it'll be different demonstrations at tables, time to network, time to maybe sit down, with you, for example, if people have had experiences and network with like-minded people and realize there's a support group out there for these things.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, I've just started doing more of the metaphysical side of these conventions. That's how we actually met at the Gainesville Expo, and it's really interesting for me that I'm coming from my specialty is cryptids. I like the animals and the weird creatures and stuff that roam around
right.
the world. But there's so much more to it with this energy and stuff, and I'm starting to find that I'm getting more and more interested in that as well. And obviously, I'm sticking with my cryptids, but
Yes.
but the energy side of that is very fascinating as well because I'm very scientifical, and
Yes.
I like the science aspect of that. And for me, when you break down all this stuff, uh, everything is energy in
Yes.
from a scientific viewpoint and aspect in that. When you're looking at what's inside of a rock, it's atoms and
Yes.
molecules and quarks and protons, electrons, and all that stuff, and that's the same thing that's in you and me. So
Right.
if all we are is just these atoms and stuff that come together, there has to be this energy and this other stuff that goes with it. And going into the Reiki and the energy and the holistic and all that is really
Yeah.
interesting to me, talking to all the guests that we've been able to meet at these conventions and stuff. If, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really something to see, and how I explain it to my kids too, because that's just it, is we are all made up of the atoms and everything that science has identified. But then for me, when I'm looking at the Reiki and the other stuff, I'm kind of operating in that the other, kind of the unseen. And so like I explain to my kids, like they have a remote controlled car, they drive it around, they run it until the battery dies. But when, if you look at your body like that remote control car, and you look at your spirit and the energy and all of that as the battery that fuels that car, well, when you take them out, they don't work without each other. You still have that battery, you still have that car. But so I kind of look at the energy as that battery that fuels us. And so if we don't take time to recharge that and keep that in good shape, well, then the car is not going to drive appropriately either.
Hmm. That makes a lot of sense. I was wondering, do you have any like for somebody like that has come from me for like the more scientific aspect in that it's
Yes.
very hard to like comprehend this energy, you know and is there anything that somebody that's more, I guess, skeptical of this stuff, is there a way that you can like explain or demonstrate or something like that?
For me, within my abilities, no, because I can't like show you. Uh, but there's a lot of people who, for example, see auras, which I don't. But the aura is the energy around your body, and there is different technology that can take photos of your aura. And so, to somebody who would be questioning energy, that would be something I would talk to them about. Go see this technology, stand in front of the panel and have somebody take your photo that will show you the energy fields. Otherwise, I would talk about just natural occurrences of the earth's energy, because the earth has magnetic fields, the earth has energy fields. And so for somebody that's scientific, I'd really just point to, how does that happen naturally? How does that happen within our universe? And then, okay, if it can happen here, if we can have energy fields, like plants. Plants are kind of a good example, because a lot of people look at plants as, yes, they're alive, but we're learning so much. Plants communicate, plants have energy fields, plants feel. And so if you look at all of that, and how can this blade of grass have this energy field, have this communication? Well, why can't our souls do that? Why can't people have energy fields? And so I try to put it in a different perspective, if that makes sense.
Definitely, yeah. Going off your plants and stuff. I mean, like, there's a study that's really interesting about plants, and I can't remember the species of plant, but in Africa, they found that when giraffes eat a certain plant, as this plant is being eaten and consumed and stuff, it puts out this distress, and it actually becomes toxic. And
Yes.
upwind or I'm sorry, downwind of where the plant is, it's emitting these um, endorphins, pheromones, whatever it's doing, and it's
Right.
telling all the other trees in that area that I'm being attacked, and all the other trees downwind of this one start putting out this toxin as well, and so that the giraffes don't eat them. However, the ones upwind are not getting that signal, and they remain untoxic, and that's a very good example of your communication and plants and stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing in some aspects what science can show us and what we can learn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just come across that too, and I found it just fascinating.
A lot of people think, like when you talk about the animal species and stuff like that, that they don't include plants, and I think that that's a
Right.
very big mistake, because plants are just as conscious and um, you know intelligent as any other species that we have. And when you're looking at plants and animals and stuff, there's the old adage, you can't judge on fish's intelligence by its ability to climb a tree.
Right.
And when you're looking at all these different things, you need to keep that in mind, that we may not be the smartest creatures on the planet just because we think we are.
Absolutely. And I think as a human species, in a lot of ways, we can be kind of narrow-minded in the way we observe things and how those things present to us, so that we limit, really, like the plants. We really limit what that they can feel, that because we feel like, well, we're the only ones that can express these kinds of things. And so I think as the science comes in to start showing things like that with the plants, that you're going to see more of an opening for the things like Reiki, when we start understanding the energy fields, when we start understanding energy, and how it works, that people are really going to start understanding more sides of even the paranormal and how that energy remains.
Well, let's back up here and talk a little bit about yourself. So what is it that
Yes,
you actually do?
I don't know, I kind of like jack of all trades. So I am a spiritual life coach, and I'm a certified psychic medium. So as a spiritual life coach, I really just try to come in with my clients and help them be aligned with things that they want to accomplish, helping them come more into present mind, how they're considering things. If their goal is to be debt free, help them realize ways that they're not in line with their goal. So how can I pull that in? As a psychic medium, I come in when I do sittings with people and try to connect them to spirit's message. I'm basically a conduit. It's all I possess is the ability to receive the information from spirit, from the other side, from their past loved ones. So I just try to relay it. Like, I look at myself as a big copper pipe. I'm just relaying the information, and through that, I just hope that I can foster healing, because I do feel like sometimes when we lose people or when we're not connected to spirit, there's a lot of healing that doesn't happen within our lives. And even in losing a loved one, conversations that may not have been had, things that weren't said that needed to be said. I try to help people heal those things that they really may not think they even have the opportunity to heal because that person's not around.
Very interesting. That's awesome. Um, do you? So let me ask you a question. Like, our spirit medium, we have one on our team and stuff, and I mean, we've talked about that on the show quite a few times already. But like, how do you experience? Like, how do you see people? Do you just hear voices?
Sure.
How do you communicate?
So it changes. Most of the time, I can physically see spirits. That doesn't happen as often for me. Usually it's what people refer to as their third eye. So while I have experienced seeing spirit physically, now that I have learned to control my abilities and actually communicate, I don't see them actually with my regular eyes. I usually see them in my third eye. And for me, when spirit of somebody who has crossed over or transition comes into me, they usually come in on my right side, and I'll get like an impression of them. And as I've been learning to work with my abilities and kind of given into accepting that I have abilities, the techniques have kind of changed. Spirit used to, before, when I was a lot more basic in my understanding of abilities, would like line up. So if your grandma was coming in, she would line up, you know, two people back. So I would have mom and then mom's mom. Now it's more kind of an impression of how that relationship felt. So, you know, if I have somebody coming in, I would say, well, okay, this is what I'm seeing, but she feels like an older woman. I feel like this would be a grandmother relationship. So it's more how they make me feel about the relationship. And then it's from there, once I've established the connection with the person coming in spirit, I just relay the information. It's like I am having a conversation with them, just like you and I are. And they're giving me the information. When I'm receiving information psychically, for me, that usually comes in on the left side. And it more or less just kind of pops in my head. Sometimes they'll show me pictures or images, symbols, things like that. I just kind of know it. Outside of that, I feel a lot. I will feel the presence of spirit coming in. You know, it's almost for me like if you walk into a crowded room, that's how I'll start to feel. I'll just start to feel like it's close. I feel like the other energy pushing in against my energy.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you actually like you get to actually hear like from the
Yes.
lips then. That's cool.
Yes.
See, our medium only really sees pictures.
Okay.
And that's how he communicates with it, and that and he doesn't really like he needs work like as far as like to be able to understand what he's seeing.
Yes, I understand that.
Yeah. We actually did an episode called The Test, and we took our empath and our psychic out to a location where a tragic event happened. And we asked them without any knowledge, we said, okay, tell us what you see here. Tell us, you know, if you're getting anything. And both of them went to the, you know, we were in a broad area, and they both went to the location. It was a suicide. This gentleman, his wife filed for divorce, and he shot himself in the back of this building, and it's actually was at the time the neighbor of one of our other investigators, so he knew the whole story. Everything that happened was there when it happened and stuff. Well, not there, but you know, lived in the house and stuff.
Right.
And we took them there, and we said, you know, tell us what happened. And Derek, our medium, he said that I feel that this person had a heart attack, and that there was a fire in this building. And I said, well, why do you feel that? Tell me what you're seeing. You know, just we've told him just to talk.
Yes.
You know, don't tell us what you think. Tell us what you're seeing and experiencing. Because when he did that, he's like, well, I see like this flash, you know, like a gunshot or something.
Yes, like the gunshot.
Yeah. Fire of this explosion.
Yes.
So he's saying, well, there was a fire here. But that's not what he's actually getting. That's how he's interpreting it. And and the heart attack is the heart. He had a you know, like he went through a divorce, a lot of heart pain. So he's saying, you know, my heart broken, you know, and I shot myself. And Derek's going, he had a heart attack and there was a fire. So it was a lot of learning process for us as a team, as far as him to understand, for us to understand the information that he's given as well. So
yeah, and that's, you know, a great point, because I think especially when people are learning and developing their abilities. And one thing, when I was going through with my teacher, Dayette Renee, she taught us, give what you get. So not trying to interpret what you're feeling or what you're seeing. And that's, you know, sometimes too, even when I'm reading for clients, I might get something that I don't understand, and I'll tell them, I don't want to interpret this. This is exactly what Spirit's showing me. I don't know how you want to interpret it, but this is what they're showing me. And because I feel pulled to working with like missing people or those kinds of things, in those cases too, it's also very important to just be clear. I see dirt. I see, and not add, you know, and just describe what you're seeing. Sometimes maybe something you're hearing or how you feel. And I think if he starts doing that, I think he'll be fantastic. It's just learning how you're experiencing things and then how to give that information back out to whoever needs to receive it.
That's very important right there. And you made a comment there that kind of struck me. When you're saying that I see dirt, a lot
Yeah.
of people, you're talking about missing people and stuff. A lot of the people
Mhm.
that you hear, these skeptical people that say, well, all these psychics are the same, all these mediums are the same. They say, oh, I see body of water, I see dirt, and oh,
Mhm.
miraculously just happened to line
Right.
up with where they're looking. But that makes a lot of sense when you look at it from that point of view. You're not interpreting. You could
No.
see a whole park, but because you're not interpreting it, you're just saying
Right.
this is what I see. And I think that's important to note and to point out to these people that are psychic, skeptic about these things,
Yes.
that that's why you're doing it that way.
Right. And each medium and psychic really receives information so differently. When I finally started being willing to accept that I had abilities and work with them, and I started networking and I started meeting people, I was shocked at how different everybody is in either how they receive their information, what they're dealing with. And for me, what I deal with is I tend to deal with both the good and the bad side of spirit. And, not everybody that's a medium, they'll tell you, hey, it's all great, it's love and light. They don't deal with any of the negative things. Where I'll be like, okay, yeah, it's all great and love and light, but what's that thing in the corner growling at us? And, I am the one that's usually doing house clearings, coming in and helping support people to remove negative energies and those kinds of things. But everybody's different, and everybody, you can say you're a psychic or you're a medium, and it's vastly different from what somebody else who also identifies as a medium does.
That's a good point. Can you kind of clarify the difference between like a psychic, a medium, an empath and stuff like that? Because
Yeah,
a lot of people like group that all as the same thing, and I don't think that you realize that they all do different things.
they do. And that's even myself. When I came in and first started taking classes with Dayette, I was like, a psychic and a medium to me was the same thing. Like, you talk to dead people. Well, no, you don't. And so one thing I did learn is not all psychics are mediums, but all mediums are psychic. And so first, everybody needs to know we all are psychic. We all have some ability of intuition, and that's basically what being psychic is, that intuitiveness. Maybe you're driving down the road and you just get that feeling like, I need to turn here or I shouldn't go that way. And later you find out there was an accident. That's psychic information. That's just information that just comes to you and your intuition. Mediums are directly communicating with somebody who has passed or is in spirits. And so, like I said, to me, they're right here. I'm having a conversation with them. They're in my space. And usually I can talk out loud, but usually it's a conversation that I just have in my head, with the person that's coming in to give a message. And that's what mediums do. So you're connecting directly to the soul, getting that information, having that conversation. Empaths really are, the sensitive, you pick up on the emotions. Some feel them way more than others. And, that's where it is very important to protect your energy, protect what you're letting into your energy field, because especially, like, here's a great example. If you're empathic and you're working in an office, and let's say somebody that you're working with is just like very cranky, very irritable, just a downer, you're going to start taking on some of those personality traits and feeling irritated and not even having any clue why. And so, there's all different things that empaths can do to protect their energy. So yeah, there's different things. And then even in those, some psychics, get their information differently. Some, it's so vast that I really could understand why people are skeptical, why people come in and say, well, this medium, she said, and I have that all the time because I work on a psychic call-in phone line, and I'll have people call in all the time. Well, this psychic or this medium told me this, and this was the information they gave you. Well, I can only give you what I'm receiving. I don't know what they were receiving or how they receive it. I don't usually get names. I don't, if I'm looking at a missing persons case, I don't get coordinates. I can only describe the surroundings, describe what I'm feeling. So you really have to look at the individual psychic or medium that you're working with, or the empath, and understand how they work within their abilities and go from there.
Very well said. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like I said, when we were going into this, our team does this like a very scientific approach and everything. And
Yes.
So when we're, trying to learn how to use those members of our team and our empaths and mediums and stuff like that, we put them to the test, and not to disprove them or, whatever,
Right.
but to understand how they work and what they're picking up on when we know the situation. So when we
Right.
took them out into the field to find new evidence and communicate with things and stuff like that, we know already what they're going to be able to do and not do,
Mhm.
because we put them to the test to see
Right.
how do you interact with this. I have a question. So you the people that I've communicated with in like the metaphysical and
Yes.
that area refer to the spirit.
Yes. I
Can
get
you-
that question a lot. I know where you're going with this.
Cool.
And I don't have to be psychic to know that.
Wow.
Wow.
Can you explain a little bit about spirit and what
Yes.
what that means to you and this whole thing?
Right. And I think there's probably different thoughts on this based on who you talk to. But to me, when I say I am talking to spirit, sometimes it's kind of like a general term. So if I'm like, oh, I'm talking to spirit, it might be somebody's spirit guides coming in talking to me. It might be, usually it's spirit guides. That's where I feel like I get my information from, when they're just giving me information. Sometimes people say, they're talking to spirit, and that's the deceased loved one that has come in. And so it's kind of a broad term. There's even times like I'll say, yeah, I was talking to spirit, and that's really when I was meditating or praying, and I'm referring to spirit as the higher power, God, however you want to term that out. And I think I'm probably like the worst person to even ask that question, because
Sorry.
I'm kind of, no, that's okay. I'm kind of unconventional, and probably really, I feel like I'm really different in my thought process, because even when I look at like talking to God and talking to the spirit, I guess you could say, or source, some people will refer to source when they're talking about the higher spirit. I don't really know what to call them, because when I look at like the different religions and things that I learned growing up, I grew up Christian and in a Christian household, but I've also looked at other religions, and I like Greek mythology. I like Roman mythology. Like you look at all these things across time, even Egyptian time, the stories are so similar, and the structure of the spirits and the religion are very similar. That to me, and my belief, and there's probably people out there going, oh, she's gone off the deep end, but my belief is really that they've always been the same. It's just what we have called them has changed. The dogma, I guess, of religion has changed. And as humans, or man has come in, and I even struggle with different aspects within the Bible, because it was interpreted by us. There's big chunks of books that have been left out. And so to me, when I say I'm talking to spirit, outside of if it's a spirit guide coming in or the individual right next to me, I'm not always sure where they fall within that hierarchy of spirit. It's just kind of, for me, it's that universal catch-all, I guess. Which, and I know, you could talk to lots of other people who would really, the upper and the lower levels, and to me, I just, whoever comes in and I'm talking to and I know they're in spirit form, I kind of throw them under spirit.
Cool. I'm glad that you kind of took that way, because it led me into my next thought here. Is that
Perfect.
yeah, you're right on. Great job today. So I've always, like I said, come from a very scientific background, and very, I want evidence. I want proof.
Yes.
Because I'm not out to convince anybody, but if I can't give you data, why am I telling you? If I can't back up what I'm saying, whether you believe it or not. So something that has always bothered me was that, when you hear these stories of demonic possession, or, evil things, or, Bigfoot and Dogman and these other creatures, and people pull out a cross and they say, the power of God, leave me alone, and you have no power here, and all that stuff. And these entities, whatever they are, back off.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's always bothered me that why does the name of God or whatever cause these things to back off? And I made a connection. Now I want to get your opinion on this.
Okay.
Is that, we had talked about energy and everything. Well, when you're projecting energy, it depends on where you're coming from. So if you're saying that, I don't believe in you, I don't have this energy, you're putting your thought, your energy, against whatever's coming at you.
Yes.
So you're projecting this field. And whether you believe it as your own energy, or, when people, this is where I'm going with this, is that whatever you believe in, if you believe in God, this is your highest power. This is what you believe, and it has the most power and energy for you. So even if God doesn't exist, even if it's complete nothing out there, it's your energy and your belief energy that you're putting against these entities, which is why it's leaving. So if you're Buddhist or Muslim or Jewish or Christian, whatever you are, no matter what you believe, that energy that you're putting out is what's causing it to leave, not the name that you're invoking.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's, kind of how I feel too. And part of my belief structure, and my belief structure is really wholly based on my experiences, growing up, my religious background, but then my individual experiences with the paranormal, with my abilities, and everything kind of rolled into a ball. So right or wrong or indifferent, I have always felt that we are part of that main energy. So whether you call it God, whether, source, like you said, the Buddhist religion, wherever, that we are all parts of that pure energy. And so we carry it with us. I do feel that individuals who may not have any belief system, I have seen really struggle more with the negative sides of the paranormal, because they don't have any belief system. So when they are presented with these negative things, they have nothing to back them on it. And then it, to me, becomes all consuming. One thing I, have always told my children, because they also both exhibit abilities, is even in their experiences, I would tell them, do not be afraid, and not that you're not startled, not that, it's a jump scare or it catches you off guard, but that pure fear. And I'm sure you know what I mean when I say that pure fear that we have. I said, you have to stand strong in your power. You have to know that there are things around you that protect you. And I am a true believer in, just as we can, and you kind of touched on it, as we can manifest these positive things, if in that time of this pure fear, we start letting our thoughts go uncontrolled, that manifests, that darkness is able to connect with that. And that's really hard to get out of. And so, in our house, it is God. And that's what we talk about. But I will tell my boys, I'll say, if you ever have an experience, first of all, know you have protection of the universe, of God around you. You also have, like their grandpa is on the other side. I said, your grandpa is around a lot. Stand strong in your ancestors, in those energies that are still here to help protect you and keep your power. Do not give your power over to fear. And so when you don't have any of that belief system and these things start happening, it's all fear. And then it all becomes that negative building and manifestation of negative things.
I think that's a very good point too. We experienced this one family called us in our episode documenting fear. They were experiencing all this bad stuff, and they just wanted us to come in and show that they weren't crazy, because that this stuff actually was happening, and
Right.
they wanted our help to try and get rid of this stuff. And at a certain point of this, there's nothing that I can do for you,
Mm-hmm.
because this is all internal. This is something that you have to say, I'm stronger than, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, this is your energy, whether you like it or not, is what's causing these things to manifest, like you said. And it's a long, hard journey to turn yourself around in order to clean up the stuff that you've dealt with.
Absolutely. And and in some of those cases where that's what people have going on, and they leave thinking, okay, it's this house is haunted. It goes with you because it's part of what you've manifested. It's part of your energy now. And you're right. You can't, and I've been to people's houses where they have these negative presence, and I'll tell them, okay, this is what you need to change. This is, yes, it was something that came in, but now it has the upper hand. I can slow it down. I can push it back. But if you don't start making some of these changes, it's not going to go anywhere.
I think that's very important to get across to these people. That like you were saying, that they don't have these belief systems, and when we've, for example, Gainer's Tavern, Bean Snappers, we do the investigations there, and the girls that work there, like all of a sudden this thing falls off a shelf on them, and they freak out because they don't know what it is, and it's very scary to them because they're thinking it's paranormal or something, because of stuff else that's happened. But you don't know that. You don't know if your experiences are something paranormal or if there's something that's completely mundane. But now your brain is in this loop of, oh no, there's bad stuff. For example, like you're talking about manifesting the bad energy. So your alarm goes off late in the morning. Well, now you get up and you're running late, and you get in the shower and there's no hot water left. Well, now that's even worse. And then, now you start dropping things. You drop your keys, you rip a shoelace, and you think that all this stuff is, just one bad thing after another. But it's the energy that you're putting out that's just kind of snowballed to, keep this rolling path. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great point. And that's something, my husband will even stress to our boys, the power of positivity. Because when you get in that negative mindset, you're giving power to something that isn't there or doesn't deserve that power. And so that's every morning he'll say, remember, boys, the power of positivity, and just trying to get them out of that frame of mind.
Mm-hmm. So being that you're a coach for this stuff, right? Like that's what you do,
Yeah.
right? So real
Yeah.
quick, like a couple quick things. Obviously, like you do this for a living, right? We can contact you to let's do that quick. How can someone get a
Sure.
hold of you to have you help them?
Absolutely. So I am currently just on Facebook. I'm working on getting a webpage set up, but you can find me on Facebook at Chat with Charlie. All my services are listed on there, my phone number, so people can book through there. You can also reach me by email at chatwcharlie@gmail.com.
Cool. I will make sure that I get all that stuff in the show notes so that people can click on it
Thank
and
you.
find you. Definitely, yeah. I think this is all very important stuff. But without getting, obviously whatever you're comfortable with sharing and stuff, what are some things that people can actually do, that are experiencing this?
There's, I'm still trying to actually find really good resources, which is why I was very excited when I was able to connect with you, because where I am at in the Northwoods, it's very hard to find resources to support people that are going through these things. And for me specifically, and one reason why I was like, okay, I have to adapt and learn to understand my abilities, learn to control them, was because my kids started exhibiting abilities. I could ignore mine all day long, but once my kids were, I did not want them to grow up with the fear that I grew up with the not understanding that I grew up with. And that made me really start wanting to not only advocate for my own children, but to be able to advocate for other people's children, to be able to advocate for other people. Because I grew up, and which is really why it took me so long to even step out and say, I see dead people, was because I was constantly told, if you tell anybody, someone's going to come and take you away and I will never see you again. Because there's such a negative stigma, because you can't prove it. I can give you evidence that says I'm talking to somebody that's passed over. I can give you evidence that I'm getting psychic information, but I can't physically prove it. I can't, even like the wind blows, you can see things moving. I don't even have that. And so it's really hard up here. And then being in a small town to A, get people to talk about it, but then B, even have them look for help. And one thing I'm actually really proud of is, since kind of coming out and discussing with people close to me my abilities, I've had people come in and say, hey, can you come to my house? There's something going on here. I don't understand it. And so I feel like in some small ways, I'm finally getting out there to advocate for people that need support, because I feel like resources are very small, and that I want to make sure people are connected with quality people. Does that make sense? Because there's just, it's so easy you can give cold readings and pretend that you're a psychic, or pretend that you're a medium, or you can pretend that you're going into someone's house and clearing it for them. And so I want to make sure that I'm able to connect people who are really in need, people who are in fear, with quality help.
Very good. Is there anything like advice you can give someone like, that is, going through a hard, bad day and stuff like that? Like, what are some things that they can do to try and turn that energy around on their own?
Yeah, it's really kind of depends on what they're struggling with. And one thing is, when I'm working with a client, really learning what works for them, where their train of thought is. But, in general, what I would say to people is, first, try to move out of looking at the physical world, looking at what's going wrong in the physical world. Okay, like you said, you didn't have hot water, or you dropped your keys. Once you can look at those things and say, okay, I dropped my keys, but then look at it outside of the physical, outside of it frustrating me. So now I'm identifying that dropping my keys really frustrated me. How did it harm me? What is in there that's worth giving my energy to? And once you're able to start looking at those things and say, you know what, okay, I dropped my keys, it ticked me off, but it's not worth giving my energy to it, resetting and moving on. So it's about a lot of changing perspective, getting people to look at things differently, getting people to identify their needs honestly, and honestly identifying their emotion. A lot of times we don't like admitting that we're frustrated for whatever. We don't like to feel vulnerable. So it's working through processing and teaching them tools to allow themselves to be vulnerable, but how to work within that space, and how to change their mindset. For me, it was hard, especially with coming out, looking at, it was really about being vulnerable. Well, why don't I like being vulnerable? What do I think the bad things can happen? For me, it was, I didn't want people to view me as weak. I didn't want people to view me as not being authentic. And so that's where my vulnerability was. Okay, well, how do I not be weak? How can I allow myself to be in this space of vulnerability, but still exhibit or push out my strength? Well, for me, it was being educated. For me, it was taking classes, having that knowledge set. Okay, well, now how can I work within being vulnerable and people not think I'm a con artist? Well, my reputation. You know, people that have known me for years that don't know I'm a medium, no, I have integrity, know the kind of person I am. And so just getting people to look at those different things, getting them to understand the interconnection of our emotions and our thought processes and how to kind of stop and reset throughout the day to get back into alignment with where we want to be.
Sounds good. Good advice. All right. So we're gonna switch topics here. We got a little bit of time left. So you've done some paranormal investigating, correct?
I have, not much, but I have dabbled.
Cool. So do you have any fun stories or scary stories or anything as far as that? You talked about things growling in the corner at you and stuff, so I'm a little curious.
Yeah, that was more growing up.
Okay.
Experiences
sure, let's go down that road.
Yeah. So growing up, I'm from the East Coast. I'm from Pennsylvania, and we lived in a like Victorian style. The house was built in 1850. Okay. So it was an old house. It had things that went bump in the night, and so I would see things because that's when I was really seeing more with my physical eye. And I would always see these, like, not even shadow people, because I don't even think, like, shadow people aren't always bad, but it was almost like, the best they could describe it is like, like how maybe they describe like a scrawny werewolf, like how they would draw that picture, but like kind of hunched down and red eyes. And I would just occasionally see this, like see it in a corner or see it like in the basement. I didn't like going down there at the time. And I never really understood like how to get rid of it. I would just always be like, okay, it's there. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to be, so that I'm not afraid. I knew innately at a very young age not to let them know I was afraid, but I didn't know how to deal with them being in my space, if that makes sense. I didn't know how to operate within the two. And, growing up, I had so many of those negative experiences because I was like, the best way I ever heard it described is like, I was like a beacon of light. So I was drawing everything in, but didn't know, what to do about it. So a lot of it was ignoring. I remember when I was older and my room was actually moved down to the basement, which was like 2 rooms. So I had like my living room and then I had my bedroom on the other side. And I was sleeping and I heard a noise, like my keys rattling. I was in college and I could hear my keys rattling. And I'm like, what's going on? And I hear them rattling. And I felt the energy within my room change. And it was one of those, I just pulled the blankets up over my head and I laid there, and I said the Lord's Prayer until I fell asleep because I didn't know at that time. I didn't know how to handle it. And I remember I woke up the next morning and I'm getting ready for school and I can't find my keys anywhere. And I had forgotten about the experience in the middle of the night before. And I'm running around the house and my mom's like, well, there's an extra key up there. Take your key, go head out. So I run down to get in my Jeep. My Jeep was locked. It was an old 2-door Sahara. So my Jeep was locked and my keys were sitting in the middle of the front seat of my Jeep. And I'm like, okay, and then that night when I came home, I went down to my room and I said, I don't know who you are. I don't want to see you. You're not allowed to touch my things. And so, but I had a lot of those very persistent, or what people would describe as scary scenarios. There was somebody, a young boy who had drowned in the river by where we lived. So it was like an alleyway kind of where we lived along the river. So it was houses and then the guardrail and then the river. And there were lots of nights I'd roll over in bed and I'd see him standing in my bedroom. And it was scary because that was presented as a scary image. I know now he just probably wanted to talk, probably wanted to give me a message, but it was fearful then. My mom, I even hate going back to visit my mom, which sounds horrible because she's always like, you can stay at my house. And I'm like, or not, like, or not, mom, because it's so, being an old house, it's so active. But I guess my, I don't want to say my favorite story, but something I guess that was probably the most pivotal for me in my abilities and kind of coming together with all of this was my Nana's house. She was my great grandmother. There was always things going on at her house. And I remember as I was little, she had a staircase that went up to what was her attic. And I'd always see shadows. And I would always see probably like a teen, I would say a teen boy sitting on the step. And he was kind of dressed like an Amish boy. So the dark pants and the blue thing. And sometimes he'd be wearing a hat. Sometimes he would be holding it. And I would see him all the time. And about a year ago, my aunt and uncle and my dad, they had come out for a visit. And my uncle stayed up late and him and I were talking. And he was telling me that he was really proud of me for coming out with my abilities, starting to talk to people about it. And then we started talking about my Nana's house. And he said something. And I said, you mean that boy? And he was like, I never told anybody. He'd been experiencing the same thing, but because of the stigma. And then I find out like all these people in my family have abilities, but everybody is afraid to talk about them. So, I guess I would say I kind of went off topic, but my favorite paranormal things have all kind of been the ones I had when I was younger that really moved me into needing to understand my abilities.
Awesome. That's a lot.
It is. I'm sorry.
That was cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have another question for you as your
Okay.
opinion.
Yeah.
Just because you brought it up with the shadow people, and it kind of reminded me of this, and I've been working on researching and stuff this as well. There's an entity that is known as the Hatman.
Oh! I didn't bring him up because I didn't want to talk about him.
Okay, we don't have to talk about him if you don't want to.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I had intentionally left him out of my experiences because I don't know. God, okay. So my mom's house, and I used to see him a lot. He was like a shadow, and then he would wear like a top hat kind of thing, and he would just stand there. And that was probably, and I still get goosebumps with him. He would stand there and just stare. And that started probably when I was about 6 or 7, and was really why I started sleeping with the blankets over my head, because, and I had never, as I got older, like known anything about him. And I was actually watching an episode of Ghost Hunters, and they had brought up something about that. And I froze, and I'm like, you mean other kids see him? I don't know if it's the childhood struggles that I had with not understanding him, and I still don't understand him, but it's almost like we talked about putting that energy out where I usually avoid talking about him because I don't want my kids to see him. Does that make sense? Like, it's just like, okay, if he's tied to me, are my kids going to see him? Because I don't understand. But yeah, so I had talked to my cousin about this, and she told me she used to see him too. And I kind of dabble in reading about it, but yet I don't, because I don't I don't want to invite anything inadvertently in. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I probably sound crazy, but
No.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I from my personal aspect of this, I would suggest maybe you do talk to your children, because if they're having the same experiences that you are, it might be good
Yeah.
to communicate with them and have that discussion. But
Right.
I will also tell you that I have seen him on one occasion
Oh,
in my house. My mom has
okay.
seen a similar entity as well, but she describes it as like a hooded entity, which is a little bit
Mm.
different. But we do the paranormal tours at Gainer's Tavern, and the Hatman is a very big part of that. This 6.5
Oh,
foot tall
yes.
fedora hat person. So, from your experience of being a medium and stuff, have you ever communicated with it, or have you gotten what is
No.
your sense of this thing?
I think okay, I'm going to places I don't want to go. Okay, so I think
That's what I'm here for.
I know, it's okay. I have the cold sweats now, Barnaby. I have the cold sweats. I think looking back, if I look back honestly over, I can remember 3 times very clearly interacting with him. And he never like tried to scare me. He never came closer. He always just kind of stayed in his spot. I don't know. Even now, like going back to that energy, and there's a lot of things that can show up, and I can pick up on their intention, on how they feel. And there I have such a lack of understanding of why even that presence. And at first I had just associated him with my mom's house having been built in the 1950s or the 1850s, how people dressed. I just at that time was like, okay, maybe this was somebody that was in the house. But as I had grown and as I find more people have seen this, but I don't understand the connection. Even in the research that I do, and like you having saying that you've had that experience, where's the connection? Where's the connection with all of us that have had that?
Well, I got a theory.
Oh, I want to hear. I do.
I don't know if I've ever actually talked about this on anything either, so this is new here. Um, I have a theory on. I'm working on this, and that's why I ask people that kind of bring it up, or possibly have any insight. Um, I saw my Hat Man in my house after I did an experiment with one of my friends. We were doing like
Light as a
psychic.
feather, stiff as a board.
No,
Oh, but when you say that, I'm like, oh. Okay,
we
sorry. I didn't mean
we
to interrupt, but it triggered something in my mind.
we were sitting back to back on the floor in my living room, and this was right after I had started caps. And we would pick a card, and we would try and mentally send that card to the other person. And we were getting like pretty decent results as far as like back and forth. And it was right after that this thing appeared in my house. My
Oh,
theory is, if you look at old, Mothman prophecies,
mm-hmm.
alien encounters, and stuff like that,
Yeah.
there's another connection that goes with all of this, and that is what people call the Men in Black.
Yes.
These people that show up in fedoras, black cars, and the trench coats and stuff. So, what if these Men in Black, whatever they are some other form of interdimensional being or something that can manifest? And when these people like yourself that starts to come into their powers, or people start experimenting or poking in places that they shouldn't, these things come
Mm-hmm.
to pay you a visit and keep an eye on you. because you have, like you've obviously experienced a lot of other spirits and people and relatives and stuff coming in, and this thing stands out beyond all that, right? Like you just said, you
Yeah. Oh
couldn't
yeah.
put it in one of those boxes, so it's
Right.
obviously outside the realm of this stuff. And if enough people are seeing this entity and it's there and doing this, then maybe it's keeping an eye on those that are keeping an eye on the other stuff.
You know, I think you're onto something with that theory. Just looking
Good,
at
great.
no, well, but when you're talking about like when you first saw him, and
Mhm.
I'm like kind of going back as you're talking and trying to review when these things came in for me. And at a very young age, which I didn't know everybody couldn't do, but I learned to lucid dream, to control my dreams, to work within my dreams, and to have that control. That was about the first time I saw him. The next time I remember seeing him is I had a sleepover. I was probably in middle school, and we were sleeping over upstairs in my mom's room. So she had like a door that would go out to the back porch, and then a small like half bath, and then her bedroom, and a door that went to the hallway to the rest of the house. So we were all us girls were kind of up there. And one of the girls is like, "Oh, let's play stiff as a feather, light as a board," which is where somebody lays down and you all put like two fingers on them
Okay.
and then try to lift them up. And I'm like if my mom would have walked in and saw us doing that, she would have busted my butt. Like that was not okay in my house, right? And so I was kind of hesitant. And I remember this night so well because it was so windy outside, and we had my cat locked in my mom's bathroom. So you have the wind blowing, you can hear the wind chimes outside, and then you got the cat at the bathroom door pawing and meowing because he didn't want to be in there. So you have all these other sensory things going on. And I'm like, okay, we'll do it. Like, what are the odds my mom's gonna walk upstairs, right? So somebody lays down and we start doing this, and I know I'm gonna sound crazy, but she started lifting up. And like the minute that happened, the wind stopped. They oh so the wind stopped, the cat stopped. Like it was silence. And all of a sudden there was this bang, and the door to my mom's bedroom flew open, and you felt all this air. Like I'm covered in goosebumps right now. All this air rush in, and of course we stopped. Like we all freaked out. I slept with the Bible that night. Like I have never done anything like that after that. Like no Ouija boards, no nothing. Like nothing. But then after that, I saw him, and then the third time, I can do remote viewing. And when I was a kid, like, you'd have unsolved mysteries on TV, and I'd always like try to remote view and find the missing people, or, tune into even like, and I know Sylvia Brown doesn't have the best reputation now, but, she was big on TV then, and I'd always see if I could get like the same thing she was getting kind of thing. And I remember watching something talking about how I swear somebody's going to show up at my house. The CIA would use people to remote view.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, I bet I can do that. And I probably tried looking in places I shouldn't have.
Oh.
And not long after that was the last time I saw him. And that's when I shut down all my abilities. I was freaked out, shut down, didn't try to remote view anymore, didn't want to talk to spirit, didn't want to see any of this stuff that was going on. And I mean, I think whether it's in connection to him or not, there is some validity in your theory just based on those circumstances.
Well, good. I will keep working on my theory. And I want to say I really appreciate you sharing that because it seemed like it
Yeah.
was very hard. And um, Yeah,
It's a little uncomfortable.
the people listening to this podcast aren't going to see you squirming over
No,
there,
they
but
can't see me. Yeah.
I really appreciate it because that adds a lot of credibility to my thoughts and how this is, and I need to look into more. There's another podcast, I can't remember which one, but actually is very into Hatman and Flannel Man.
Okay.
Which is this guy that shows up that's kind of like a lumberjack person.
Oh,
which is
thankfully I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him.
Now this is
so you talk about him.
This is the other side of that is, when you have an alien encounter, you see the Men in Black. When you have a Bigfoot encounter, you have a short man in a suit and a tall man in flannel that show up at your house and tell you not to talk about it.
Really?
Yeah.
Now I know somebody that had a Bigfoot experience, so I'm going to have to ask them and see if they had that.
See, this is why, I don't remember if it was on this podcast or the other. I was just earlier today.
Yes.
I was on your podcast, so this was taped back in
on Dayette's, yeah.
Yeah, Dayette's podcast. But I think we were talking about it on that one, so go check that one out. Links are on our Facebook already. It's already out there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I lost my train of thought there.
The flannel man. Yeah, you're talking about the flannel man.
And well, they show up and basically just like tell you not to talk about what you saw. Yeah, I totally lost my train of thought of where I was going with that though. But yeah, it's very interesting. Oh, the things that you learn about when you poke subjects.
Yes.
Like if I wouldn't asked you about your other weirder experiences with the paranormal, we never would have went down this road, and I never would have been able to make those extra connections because you never know. Like I said, when a witness comes to me, I cannot discredit anything they say, and I have to dig as deep as they'll let me dig, because you never know where those connections are going to be and stuff.
Right.
Bigfoot. There is a connection with a woman in white. There's a lot of...
That makes sense.
There's a lot of stories of these people that have interactions with Bigfoot, going back to Ape Canyon. For anybody that's familiar with that story, these miners were going out to look for this mineral deposit for mining and stuff, and they saw this woman in white in the forest, and she's like, if you go down over here, you'll find this. And then that night they had a run-in with Bigfoot that, threw rocks at their cabin, and it's Ape Canyon. Wow. It's a famous Bigfoot story of these miners and their experience. But they encountered the woman in white. Now, I've told this story on a couple other episodes and stuff, but for your sake and, people who might not listen to it, when you're looking at other mythologies and stuff, in Fey mythology, there is the woman in white, the Lady of the Lake, and the hag. Who is the guardians of this body of water, etc. And depending on a sacred body of water, I'll point out.
Yes.
And she's the guardian of this. And this goes back to, King Arthur and the Holy Grail and the quest for the sword. You have the woman in white that the Lady of the Lake that guides him. She starts out as the maiden, and then as the body of water gets older, she becomes the Lady of the Lake, and then she becomes the old hag. And you have a story in Fey mythology of the woman in white, the Lady of the Lake, and she travels with a large hairy man and these floating balls of light.
Oh, that's really interesting.
And a lot of
people go ahead, I'm sorry.
Bigfoot have these balls of light or orbs that they see as well in conjunction with Bigfoot. And unless you poke that hornet's nest, you don't find out all these little details. So go ahead.
I find it interesting, and actually Dayette and I were just having a conversation not that long ago about the Lady of the Lake, and I had told her I had, as a child, a reoccurring dream that, I'd go out, the back door of my mom's house, but then it was like I stepped through something, like a portal, or I stepped through something, and I was taken to a lake. And there was always a woman in the lake trying to talk to me. And, there are times like she'd put her hand out and I'm like, I'm not taking your hand and going in the lake. But I am probably about 5 notches below, I was always obsessed with King Arthur, with all of that stuff. So it's just interesting how you tie that all together.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at my experiences of reoccurring dreams, of interests and things that I was kind of obsessed with, especially when I was younger, it's really fascinating.
Mm-hmm. And you have the other mythologies. I can't think of what I'm trying to think of, but the like the sirens of the water.
Yes.
You have the mermaid stories as well, and
Yep.
not a dryad. The water ones. I can't think of what they are. Naiads. Duh.
Oh, yes.
Dryad, naiad. Yeah. Anyway, but you have these also in mythology, and when you're looking at these things, they're called different names. But when you
Right.
strip that away and you look at what it is,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know, I always say about like Bigfoot, every has been seen around the world, and they call it different
Yes.
things: the Yaren, the Yeti, the Yahoo, the uh, everything, Bigfoot,
Hmm.
Sasquatch. But it's always the same creature, and it's just seen around the
Yes.
world. And when you're looking at like Mothman, you see the same symbolism of these
Hmm.
owl man or bird man and stuff like that. That people are like, well, isn't it just from this one place? Well, if you look at actual mythology and history and lore, and like even look
Right.
at Mothman and like a harpy. These flying
Oh, yeah.
humans.
Absolutely.
You have all these different things that match up, and people are like, that's nothing. Well, then why has people been seeing it all
Hmm.
over the world? You know?
Right. Yeah. I think all of it comes from some kind of basis. And I mean, my husband and I even talk about that with, I love horror movies. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
horror movie buff. I love paranormal movies, but the paranormal movies get me a little bit more because I can deal with somebody being psycho and a killer. But when you look at like the horror paranormal movies, and I'll tell my husband, I'll say, that's based on something. Somewhere that is based on someone's experience or something that happened. Like this doesn't just come up. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where I feel like all these things are based off of things. And a lot of people look at paranormal activity and say, oh, that was just somebody being creative. No, there's some truth in so many of those.
Oh, definitely. Like, you want to talk about horror movies and stuff. That the things that are based on real stories that
Yeah.
I've learned you didn't know. I'll give you two examples here. Number one, the movie Close Encounters.
Yes.
That movie is actually a true story. What
It is.
happened?
That's one of my favorite movies. I love that movie.
What happened was it was a police officer that had this experience. He got fired from
Hmm.
the force for telling his story, and then he was
Hmm.
brought in to help with the movie and the what do you call it, the authenticity of the movie itself.
Right.
And he was really upset because they changed the main character from a police officer to just a regular person. But that's
Hmm.
a police officer's story. And another example, which I find really interesting, is the movie The Blob
Oh,
is actually
that I didn't
based
know.
on a true story. So it's the blob is this big gabagoo that goes
Hmm.
around eating people and doing stuff and that. And no, there wasn't this man eating gabagoo, but there was a gabagoo that was found that came from outer space, and they went to
Wow.
test it. They took samples of it, and the next day it dried up, and there was no residue, no nothing. But there was this huge gob of weird goo that nobody knows where it went, where it came from, or whatever, and it just disappeared. And that was the base story for that movie. So it's like you said, it's very interesting that these horror movies and sci-fi movies and stuff are a lot more based in
Hmm.
reality than people I think want to admit. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
There's
correct. I like the blob one. Now I got to tell my son when he gets
mhm.
home. He'll be all
Yeah,
like, "Oh, that's awesome."
yeah, it's cool. Yeah, I we could go on all day. I know.
We could. I've enjoyed our time so much. I really appreciate it, and just like I said, everything that you guys do, and for your time. And I'm really excited to see you up here in June. So that'll be awesome.
Definitely. Again, go through everything again for us. When, where, how, where can we find information on the event in June? Because, like they said, that's why we have you on today, is to talk
Yeah.
about this. So give us everything, your whole pitch.
Yeah. So again, I'm Charlie Lynn. You can find me on Facebook at Chat with Charlie. You can look up our event is on there. I know Barnaby has shared it. A lot of the other vendors, Day at Renee, Psychic Medium has shared it out there too. And what I'm trying to do is check out the discussion. I'm trying to put in little bios of our vendors as we add things. And so just so people can kind of know what to expect, because I think people freak out and go, metaphysical fair, there's nothing for me to do there. There is. Come learn, network. If you have stories, come share them with, Barnaby and his team. And you can also, so you can book with me on my Chat with Charlie Facebook page, or you can email me at chatwcharlie@gmail.com.
Very cool. And again, where and when is the
that's important, isn't it? I just kind of
have not mentioned where it is at all in this whole episode, just so you know.
It's a mystery. Okay. It's June 25th in Butternut, Wisconsin at the Veterans. So it's kind of right down little downtown Butternut. It's an outside. There's a pavilion. So that's where we'll all be. Come check it out.
Very cool. All right. And this is Rain or Shine as well?
Yes, Rain or Shine. We'll be there.
Awesome. I will be there. I think a couple of my team will be there as well. And we're definitely looking forward to coming up and checking out the up north woods.
Yes.
And hearing any Bigfoot stories that you guys have up there, or paranormal or metaphysical or whatever. And we will be bringing along our recording stuff. So if you have a story to share, you can definitely come on our podcast. And, you're listening to us right now, so maybe you want to hear yourself on our podcast. We'd love to hear your story and share it with anybody that's willing to hear. And again, June 25th, we will be there. And Charlie, are you going to be at? Never mind. That's before this. Never mind. The April. I was going to say the April event.
I'm not.
April,
I want to,
now,
but I'm not. I know we're in June, so disregard April. I looked at it, and it's 6 hours, and I'm like, I should go. And then I'm like, no, it's 6 hours. I really wish I'd have signed up. I really wish I'd.
Yeah, that's a long drive for you.
It is, but I've even thought about emailing Terry and being like, hey, do you still have space? So we'll see. But as of right now, no.
Well, hopefully we see you there, because obviously this is June 9th and 10th, or April 9th and 10th is the
April
event we're talking about. And this is June 6th, so it's past. But hopefully I've seen you, and hope I get to see you at that event. But otherwise, I will see you coming up in a couple weeks here in June. And definitely looking forward to that. So hope everyone can come out and check that out. And appreciate you listening to the show. And I appreciate you being on the show today. And until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. I'm Barnaby.
And I'm Charlie Lynn.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Whispers from the Dark. To find out more about cryptids, anomalies, and the Paranormal Society, visit us at our website at wisconsincaps.com. That's Wisconsin, CAPS.com. There you can find links to all of our social media, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and our Patreon. You will see links to our online store as well, where you can get t-shirts, DVDs, and more. If you click on the public events page, you can find out where you can meet us in person and all the public events we have coming up. If you enjoy our podcast or our YouTube shows, please consider becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/WisconsinCaps. There you can find behind-the-scenes pictures and videos from all of our media, as well as bonus footage and evidence that we have collected. If you have encountered something you can't explain, we want to hear from you. Visit our website and click on Submit a Report on our main screen. You can choose to leave your contact information or simply remain anonymous. You can also reach us via email at wisconsincaps@gmail.com. If you would like to be a guest on our show, please contact us on our Whispers from the Dark podcast page on Facebook, or send us an email at wisconsincaps.com. Remember to like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen or watch or find us.